Welcome to Television as Furniture. This is our first interview for the channel, and we are very honoured to have with us the amazingly talented Kate Gall, director from Sydney, who is the artistic director of Siren Theatre Company, and who I only just learned you did like a workshop with the City Company.
Yeah, in 2004.
Yeah. Oh, so I did a quick Google to go, what have I missed? Because it's been almost exactly 20 years since we saw each other last. So what was that like?
It was great. I needed to do it. You know, they say when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And I had a really busy time, you know, directing and discovering who I was as a director and building a body of work in Sydney. But I was running out of tools, or I needed to have my language refreshed. I wanted to be sort of inspired. I wanted to be braver. And look, literally, this is the story. I was walking through the library at Sydney Uni and found this book by this woman called Anne Bogart. And I started reading it and I discovered that she was a live person. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. I read the book, really loved the book. That was The Director Prepares, her first book. I did some research and I realized they had this annual master series that you could participate in. You could apply for it and come from overseas. Anyway, I was fortunate enough to be accepted. And I was there, I think, for 4 weeks, 6 weeks all up in New York, and it was just fabulous. It was fine for me at that time. It was great. You know, you have to be ready for things. I found out a lot about the way we think about theatre here, the way that I think about it, and it certainly did all the things I wanted to do. It really honed my language. It gave me perspective, and of course, I was also confronted with some really brilliant and articulate teachers, and I aspire very much to do that. So that was an added bonus.
Yeah. Did you actually get to work with Anne?
Yes. So that's really intense, right? It's a totally intense, 4 weeks. And yes, you do get to work with Anne Bogart. She actually does the composition and directing part of things, because of course they have twin trainings of Suzuki and they also teach viewpoints. Yeah. So by the time you've done your morning viewpoints in Suzuki, then the afternoons are given over to work with Anne Bogart or other aspects of creating and directing, because it's not only directors there, they could be writers, designers, a lot of performers. We're making work. Your set tasks, you have to come up with work each week. And yeah, look, it was really stimulating. But yeah, she was really good. Again, very articulate, really inspiring, clear about what her message is. And, that's the perfect kind of teacher in a way.
Yeah. You really get that from her books as well. You said that you learned a lot about the way we think about theatre here. What was that? What did you learn?
Well, I realised that in America, obviously, it's really dominated by a college system as well. And a lot of directors, they work a lot inside the university system. It doesn't mean that it's more academic. It just means it's very sort of ghettoed in a way. Yes, we've heard of Broadway and we know that there are regional theatres, but they don't really have theatre like we have it here. Here it's kind of a bit of a free-for-all. You can or cannot go to a drama school and end up working for, MTC, like that, depending on a whole lot of, maybe random or not so random interchanges that may happen. And of course, our scene is very small here. So it's not hierarchical in the sense that a country that has, say, Broadway, or the power of regional theatres to create huge bodies of work from local writers. And of course, the other thing is how much money they put into American stories and American writing, which is in such stark contrast to what happens here, as we know. Yeah.
Okay.
Amongst other things, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. All right, so moving on from ancient history, though.
That is ancient history. God.
Oh yeah. But still good. No, I was going to ask to bring it right up to now. So obviously, you guys are under the terrible lockdown, same kind of one we went through last year. How are things up there? Not just lockdown wise, but how is theatre up there going? Gosh.
I think that second lockdown that we went into in July was really unexpected. It's kind of like Act 2 starting and you didn't hear the interval bells, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was working at Opera Australia at the time, and there was a whole winter season literally just about to launch. And then you imagine a company of that size actually losing all their shows for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's now continuing as they close down shows in other states. The enormity of that is almost hard to fathom in a way, of what that can do to the economy of scale in that company. But of course, then all the small theatres are closed. It's impossible now to actually book a theatre for next year. Well, this is what I found, because nobody's willing to, I guess, create, programming or make offers, or, sort of like build a program, because it only means if you have to cancel it, it's just so much problem. So it feels like everybody's just treading water. And so many great shows have literally been postponed, or worse, absolutely cancelled. And STC have sort of sent out missives that some things have been postponed and some things just get wiped out forever. And I think that's really sad, because it takes so long to make a show from scratch. If you're the writer, let's say, or if you're a company that's initiated, for example, Squabble Logic, we're going to launch a really fantastic musical called The Dismissal, which was looking back at the Whitlam era.
Uh-huh.
Well, of course, that one's just gone by the way now. I'm sure they'll find a way to get it up. I hope they do. But bleak, I would say, bleak.
Yeah. The Dismissal sounds awesome. I still, to this day, remember seeing the Gillies Report version of Il Dismissal.
Yeah.
I watched it only recently, actually, for some reason. It still stands up.
It's a good story.
Yeah. So great story. Really great story. Putting Australian politics history on stage is fraught at best, as I have learned to my own cost. Not to whinge about my own stuff, though. So you were working with the opera company. You were doing HMAS Pinafore or HMS Pinafore?
HMS. I did do HMS Pinafore, but that was with Siren. That was a Siren Theatre Company production, which we were fortunate to play at the Sydney Festival this year. Mm-hmm. It had done, the year before last, it had done a regional tour of New South Wales, which finished just on the night of the first lockdown. We've been so lucky with that show. But no, I occasionally work at Opera Australia, normally assisting on productions. So, I like the scale, and, it's just such a fabulous art form. But, HMS, keep your eyes peeled, because hopefully it'll be back next year.
Yeah, good. It'd be great if it came down here. And this leads me into the other thing I was going to say about theatre under lockdowns. More and more this year, and certainly last year, but very much this year, I can't help but thinking that we really need to rethink the model. We've needed to rethink the model for decades now, but not just the models of funding and companies, but how companies program and think about how they reach audiences, and being able to make works that either can come down and then go back up really quickly, or what I'm really loving at the moment is all the stuff that's going online. Last night I watched Rovers, which is Riverside, which is my next review, which was terrific, by the way. And I'd never be able to see that show, unless it came to Melbourne. There's just no way. So there are these things that I look at and go, we're so close to having a solution. A, how do we get there? And B, what is it? What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I agree. I am a huge consumer of on-demand theatre, and I have been ever since it sort of started with the Met Opera and then National Theatre Live. And of course, last year with the pandemic was a really great sort of tipping point in a way, when we got all that German theatre, and there was a whole lot of Polish stuff, and there was so much stuff coming at us. And I hadn't really considered what the implications were of creating work for that medium, or even being able to capture it in a decent way that acknowledges its theatricality, but can still be seen by a wider audience. But of course, the impact of those wider audiences, particularly on those bigger theatre companies, has been phenomenal, and they never want to lose those audiences again. Mm-hmm. This year, so I'm watching a lot of on-demand stuff from Edinburgh Fringe, which, spans the spectrum to single camera lock-off, sort of documentation style, video archival, right through to something that's actually been really considered and done for that wider global audience. And for me, it's just going to be absolutely vital now with my own work that I build into the budget, don't know how, and into the schedule, that we make something that is better than the archival, that captures the work in its theatre context, spatially, I suppose, because I do think, I hate to use that word, the new normal, but it could be a preference for some people. And as you say, I'm like you, I want to see things from interstate, which now I actually just can't even go to them. I can't, it's not even if I had the resources and the time, I can't hop on a plane and go and see something in Tassie or something in Brisbane. I actually can't leave the state. So please, the more I can watch, as you did with the La Mama show and also the Rover stuff, Critical Stages up here has been really strong and on thinking about alternative platforms to deliver that programming. I think it can only be for the better. Bring it on.
Yeah, I think so. I'm really attracted to the idea, not just the kind of disaster preparedness of it, which is even if we get COVID under control, which, who knows, but there'll be something else, right? It's not like this is an era of unprecedented disasters, right? Whether it's fires or whether it's pandemics or what have you. The stress on the infrastructure that theatre needs is just going to ramp up more and more. But beyond that, and I've been saying this for I don't even know how long, it's the biggest problem facing, I don't know so much for Sydney, but certainly in Melbourne, is that centralisation of theatre, so that maybe 10,000 people in the inner city regularly go to see stuff and are aware of it. And everybody else on the fringes, well, for them, there's TV, right? And we're never going to grow it. We're never going to do what theatre needs to do and reach out to people and actually be part of a community conversation unless we can find a way to get those people. And this is the way. But
yes, it's one way. The other way is to build a lot more smaller theatres, which is also very costly and the timeline on that's going to be, I think people should still be thinking about that as well. Particularly, Australian has that sort of suburban sprawl. And unless you live in one of the centre places, you don't have gathering. Where do you gather to do that stuff? So smaller venues, places that are, maybe less traditional in their structures. I guess it's the old town hall model, isn't it? And the country hall. But you're right. And all of those places, of course, are screening this on-demand content as well.
That sort of network of smaller suburban theatres almost happened in the 80s, right? Like with at least here, all the little community theatres and further out into that. I mean, not huge, but there was much more of that kind of local content. And they did exactly that. They built their own little communities, which is what theatre's for. Like to be able to play to an audience who can regularly come and sustain you. We don't all need to try and find a way to channel ourselves to the main companies. And so
I couldn't agree with you more. I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So like I look at it and I feel like I've been saying for a long time, there's no such thing as too big to fail. And a lot of the big companies are now starting to look at the precipice of that and say, oh yeah, how do we get past it? And I wonder if the thinking will be able to get them past it. Otherwise, it's going to be a system-wide collapse and then it'll rebuild itself exactly the way we're talking.
The one good thing though, that's doom and gloom, but I like the idea that it will regenerate. But one of the good things is I think the pandemic has been kind to the small and nimble independent companies who don't have those weighty infrastructures, that don't have long-term plans, that are hard to turn. And then all of a sudden you can find yourself doing Sydney Festival. You can find yourself doing the 5th tour of a small work because you can be more responsive. I think it's been really good for me in that respect. And that some of the work that I've done. But yeah, we don't all need to be part of the main companies to do that.
Yeah. Well, there's not enough space for everyone to be in those companies anyway, right? So it's not about that. It's about, honestly, when it comes down to, at least for me anyway, theatre is so much about the connection between the creatives and the audience, that participatory kind of shared event. Doesn't matter who the hell they are, what kind of big stage or what kind of great kind of famous actors or, etc. As long as there is that connection, that's what people come for, really. And one of the reasons they don't go anymore is because they don't get that. Yeah.
They don't get it. No, it's removed. I agree. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's YouTube, I feel like doesn't really love particularly long content, and it'll take forever to edit if it is too long. So I'm going to say thank you so much, Kate Gall. It's been lovely to talk with you.
My pleasure.
here. And also, so thank you so much for the support you've already given the both Witness when we were doing it, and also now Television is Furniture. Like support from people like you is incredibly heartening and makes me go, oh yeah, actually, there is a reason to do this and keep talking about it other than just me getting to see free shows.
Yeah, there he is. I recognise excellence, and I will always give it a good shout out when I can.